And so I prepared a few things. Basically today, I'd like to dive with you into mobile user experience testing. It's a very, very hot topic that that makes your when you work on the job very valuable, and you can bring a lot on the table, because like many companies really need people who have a good understanding about good mobile UX. But as well, I'd like to work with you together on kind of a project. So basically, you will team up with someone else in your class, and over the next couple of weeks, you guys are gonna work together on a little project. And actually, you're gonna also, at the last session that we're gonna have in 2 weeks from now, you're gonna have, or basically, each of you will give a little presentation as well. Oh. So I will talk a little bit about that later. We're gonna have a break, and then I'm gonna talk a little bit about iOS testing. So what do you have to know to get started? What are some of the valuable tools here? Because especially like many companies first start, especially here in Silicon Valley, first on iOS, and usually then it's kind of, we ship first iOS and then later usually Android. That's at least here for the market in the US. Of course, there are other markets where it's Android first. I mean, especially like worldwide, Android is becoming more and more important. So that might even change in the future. But right now, kind of what we are seeing is usually companies, especially let's say consumer-facing, they're usually shipping iOS apps first and then Android second. So you want to have a good understanding about that. And we're gonna follow with some like Q&A about the student project, where you guys can already get started, and I'm here to answer some questions. And last but not least, I also want to start a little bit with mobile test automation. We briefly, like when I was here 2 weeks ago, you guys already got started a little bit with setting up like certain tools, and we tried to continue on that, especially the next class. The next class will be more technical. Today, I'd like to get you up to speed in that sense, and then next class we're gonna write a couple of test cases. I'm trying to get I'm checking that I can get a guest speaker for next week, even like someone probably like a QA lead from a company, and we're gonna have a little fireside chat for maybe half an hour where I ask some questions and you can ask questions. So I don't want to promise right now, as I have to check when someone is available and if that fits in. But let's try to make it interactive there. As I said, I'd like you to write a first automated test case. And there will be also a little time about the student project. So that's basically next week. Then in 2 weeks, there will then be presentations. We also gonna have a little Q&A, and we're gonna continue with some mobile test automation. Any questions so far? Okay. So in the following, I'm gonna talk about mobile user experience testing. As I mentioned, it's a really, really hot topic. And as you know, I mean, if you use an app and if you don't have a good experience, what are you gonna do? You're gonna delete it, and download something else. So it's very, very important, and especially in the area of testing. If I ask you, which apps have a good experience? Say it again. iOS. Titleist? iOS. iOS using. Okay, iOS. So what do you have a specific app in mind? So what is your favorite app? Like, which one has a really good user experience? Calculator? Okay, someone else? Instagram. Why do you think Instagram has a good user experience? Easy to navigate?
Yeah,
user-friendly, okay, easy. Okay, there was some games. What do you have a specific app? Candy Crush, okay.
Angry Birds.
Okay, Angry Birds.
Then Candy Magic.
Okay, so there's a gamer here, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, great. Which apps have a bad user experience? Is there something like a certain app where you're really unhappy, or it's complicated? Okay.
And I tried to download a different one, and it was too complicated with what they had to offer. There were buttons that I didn't know how to interpret.
Okay, so they're basically, I mean, just repeating that.
They wanted to look smarter, but
Yeah.
it's hard to use it.
Okay, so basically someone tried to copy another app and then they kind of didn't copy it properly.
Yeah.
Okay, it was too complicated, too crowded. Okay. Anyone else like had a, yeah? Apple Maps. Okay, why do you find it?
Because Google Maps, you know,
Okay.
you can see the traffic over there. You can easily overcome the traffic.
Yeah.
Because in Apple Maps, you don't have that system.
Okay.
It's kind of bad for the maps, especially when you're navigating on one website. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't really think
Okay. Good. So what does actually user experience mean, or what's the definition of user experience? Basically, one person that is quite, let's say, famous in this area is a person called Don Norman. And he said, so he invented the term because he thought that human interface and usability were too narrow. And he wanted to cover all aspects of the person's experience with the system. So we heard here like, okay, it wasn't easy enough, too crowded. So basically your experience when you use an app. And that goes a lot into also like emotions, how do you feel when you use it? Because if it's not intuitive, you are frustrated and you stop using it. And also kind of when you use an app, you have a certain goal. You download that app because you want to achieve something. And so that's kind of your expectations when you use the app. And if you don't come to that goal very quickly, then you're gonna like go to something else. So many people think when they hear about like user experience, it's making it pretty, but actually it's not. So like I would say even like an old approach was, okay, let's say, does it look good? And then someone looks over it, okay, done. But actually, especially for the past few years or even like decade, like even the term experience came more up, and even like user experience designers as a kind of new job in that sense. And it's a lot about, is it on the one side, okay, you wanna, let's say it should look good, because if it looks like really bad, then you kind of don't trust it, or like you kind of lose the confidence of even using the product. So it has to kind of look decent, I would say, but as well as it has to be intuitive, has to be a good experience, easy to use. And a lot of that can be achieved through iterations. So a lot starts very early in the design process with like prototypes, where you just click through a certain click-through prototype and actually test it. But as well, a lot goes into where you guys come in, where when you look at an app or test it, you know, it doesn't make sense. It's like, even it starts with the description, with the intro. Is it clear? Like the label on the button, and so on. So a lot is then basically where testing today is not just like, okay, I found a bug, it crashed, here it is. It's also like, is it intuitive? Does it make sense? Is it easy to use? So I'm going to show you here an example. I'm actually a little bit embarrassed. There was an app where I worked on a few years ago, and I don't know, I mentioned it the last time where I said, okay, we worked on this postcard app where you could basically create your contact list with, like, let's say, you know, your parents or your brother or sisters, and then you could send them a postcard. So you took a picture, let's say I take a picture here, I'm here at Portland School, and I write a message, a sign on the screen, and then I came to this screen where, let's say, I already added my mom here. I didn't add a picture, else this icon would basically be her picture, so that's a default icon. But now I have these two buttons. What comes in your mind when you see these two buttons?
One is the email.
Is email, and the second one?
Post and the stamp.
Okay, is it a stamp? There are already questions. So it's not really clear. So as you see, it's really not an intuitive button there. The first one, okay, the email icon, okay, makes sense. But the second one already raises questions. And we shipped the app with such a UI. And of course, like, many people had questions about that. I mean, we still got like a few thousand users and many people using it. But if we would have optimized on that with this UI and make it more clear, even just saying email and postcard would have been more clear than this button. And we wanted to make it pretty that you actually see here like a stamp on top of it, but actually it's like was too much in that sense. You don't see it that it's actually like a real. It's really hard to see. And then with the contrast, I don't even imagine like someone a little bit older wants to use the app, like he doesn't even see it. So if there's one thing, let's say, what you should take away from this class, and if there's just one single thing, it's if it's slightly confusing for you. So if you have some slight doubts, if it's intuitive, then your users will be 10 times more confused. Because you work on the app, on the business every day. You kind of know, okay, we send postcards and we send emails. You have that in your mind. But the user, he basically, people here have ADHD, in Silicon Valley, they're like getting so many emails and notifications, everything. You just have a few seconds really to get the attention of the person. And if you already have some doubts, then it's not going to be clear for the user. Who knows what that is? Okay, exactly. Accessibility, like basically, people call it the Thump Zone, because when you hold your phone, you do most of it with your thumb. So let's say you're in a shopping cart and you want to press OK, buy. Where do you don't want to place the button? Top left. Or here completely, because then you have to make like this really crazy move. It actually hurts, like in the right lower corner. A huge button, exactly. Probably somewhere here, like checkout or something, buy. So that's something, let's say, usually that the designer in your mobile project has to be aware of, that actually is on his kind of responsibility in that sense. But I still see apps today where actually many people don't consider these things. So if you come into a project and you kind of see something like, okay, maybe the checkout button is here on the lower right corner, the app might work perfectly, but it's hard. So these are some of the things to just keep in mind and to consider. And of course, devices at the moment are getting larger and larger. So there are different kind of also thumb zones in that sense per devices. So that's especially when you guys work on, let's say, a large-scale app with millions of users. You have to deal with users. There are like still people on the old iPhone 4, and then people on the large iPhone 6. So just something to consider on that end. What I just mentioned in terms of devices, that means also different UX challenges. So what I'm actually going to show here is one of our clients. It's Zirks. So if you're in San Francisco, I guess most of you go here and there to San Francisco, and you own a car. Who owns a car here? Okay, so maybe half the class. So the parking problem in San Francisco. So basically, they solve this pain where you use their app and you tell them like, I'm here, and then someone will be there and gets your car and he parks it for you, and you just request it later again, and then he brings your car. So that's kind of what they do, and they're expanding all over the US. So pretty cool stuff. And so what I'm actually going to show here is like a test run where that was basically like before they shipped that version, but before launch in that sense. And I just want to show that there are actually also a lot of challenges on a UX perspective based on devices. So okay, the internet here is a little bit slow. Okay, let's see else. So some of the things to consider is, especially when it involves the keyboard. For example, you see here that's on a Zenfone 5 where now you typed in your password and actually you want to press the button of sign up. But in that case, so what would be nice is, of course, that kind of the screen scrolls a little bit up, that you directly have the button there to do it. In that case, you kind of have to, I think, first press done and then click the button, which is not, so nice. And of course, if you just have like a few devices on your desk and you don't have different form factors, then it's more challenging. So, if you look at some other devices where, that's an Nexus 7 where you directly have the login button there, it's not a problem. Maybe that might be just a border case in that sense. Okay, where's my presentation here? Okay, here it is. So going back to it. So another example. Not only are there, of course, different devices, but also different OS versions. And that means we have already seen design glitches based on different versions, both on iOS as well as Android. So you see here most devices, that's another app, most devices here on 4 point something. But okay, there's a Nexus 5 on 5 point something. And then you click on it, and then, okay, then comes this alert, and now you see that something cut here. So that's also another challenge in terms of testing, of really making sure, besides devices, there's also OS versions. And especially, let's say, on Android, the latest Android distribution, I think, is something maybe 10%, 15% right now on Lollipop. That means all the other 85% are basically, largely on Android, 4 point something, but also still a few people on Android 3 or even 2. So there's a way more larger distribution in terms of fragmentation. On iOS, I would say people, it's just a fact, usually at every WDC, like the Apple Developer Conference, you see Tim Cook, saying like, hey, already 80% upgraded, that's always one of the first things they bring in. But it's just a fact that on iOS, people more likely upgrade in that sense due to various reasons. So there's still the pain of making sure different OS versions, but let's say less likely. Okay. Here it is. Okay, so 9 key questions for mobile user experience. Who has heard about a target persona here? Okay, so a target persona, let's say you're building, there was Instagram, right? Who's the target persona for Instagram? If you look at the typical user of Instagram. So someone who takes a lot of photos. Teenagers, okay. So teenager who takes a lot of photos. Male or female? What do you think? Female. More female, okay. So teenager takes a lot of pictures, female. Like teenager, what kind of age? What do you think? Like, can we narrow it a little bit down? 16 to 40? Yeah. That's not a teenager. Okay, 16 to 19. So female, 16 to 19, takes a lot of pictures. Okay, that's already very precise. So when you work on an app, that's something to keep in mind. Okay, who's actually the person using it? Because if you target let's say 50 plus, you probably want to double your button size, I would say. Another important point is how many taps does it actually take to come to the desired outcome? So you mentioned Instagram, or coming back to the Instagram example, it's easy to use. You can very quickly take a picture, post it, add friends. So there's something called also journey map, where it says okay, what's the journey of the user to achieve certain things in the app? And that's actually something that especially the designer or user experience person should map out. Okay, what's the desired outcome? What are the steps involved to achieve that? And so, if you are testing the checkout process and you see oh my God, and you feel like I'm already getting tired by it, then again, going back to what I said in terms of if you slightly feel like, oh my God, that's complicated or it takes too long, 10 times more the users will say oh my God, I'm getting a coffee now, and don't buy it. Especially when it comes to buying. I mean, you know, they're like, you saw that amazing dress, and now like, oh my God, you're in this buying rush. I want to buy it. You know, if I, you know, you want to get the attention right away. So is it clear for the users what you actually do? So similar what I showed you with these two buttons that were not clear, but it already starts with, let's say, the description in the App Store. So some of the things that also comes into testing is actually the description in the App Store clear. That also means even when it comes to new app updates in the App Store, every time the developer can describe what is the update about. And so many companies are lazy. They just copy paste like, hey, some bug fixes, you know, nothing else. And I know people, and I've seen reviews that give you bad reviews because they always say like, yeah, bug fixes. But the user is actually interested, like, okay, what exactly did you do for us? And that actually shows like positive things where you can say, okay, now we made it compatible for Android users on 4.2 because we saw some issues there. Sorry about that. And then actually usually like, oh my God, these guys are like really working on it and care about our bugs that we maybe reported and so on. Another thing is really intro screens. I'm sure you know when you open an app, many apps you can swipe like 2-3 times where they introduce the concept. So I would say, I mean, the best apps is actually like you don't even need an intro screen. You don't have to explain it. That should be so easy. But you know, it's not always the case. But so you want to have some thought on, okay, what should be on these intro screens? How do we make it clear what we're actually doing? And where do you place the most important buttons? And you know, there's also a lot of concept in terms of A/B testing with color of buttons and labels on it, or strings, what kind of words. But I think another, I don't know if I listed it down here, is kind of you want to be consistent. If you have, let's say, if you use the next button or button on the top, you don't want to iterate between like the lower part of the screen and going up again and low. So kind of there should be at least some consistency in there to make it really easy and simple to use for the user. Another part is difference between portrait and landscape. I'm sure you've already seen, you know, differences. They're just like actually there are people, like, let's say the first thing that they do when they test an app is basically just turn it on landscape. And you will laugh, like many apps just crash. So one source that you should check out is, are we generally sticking from a mobile project to the general guidelines, what Apple is telling us, or Android? There are certain guidelines and you know what to do in terms of a drop down, or even in terms of buttons or text fields and so on. There are a few guidelines, and of course there are designers and developers, they want to go completely custom, but I've already seen apps that were like so custom and so many like nice little things that it was already like complicated and not intuitive anymore. And so especially if you're, let's say, in a smaller project, you kind of want to try to stick with the general guidelines. And if you just look up on iOS UX guidelines, Apple has a website for that, as well as Android. If you just Android UX or UI guidelines, you will find links to that. I already briefly mentioned that. Are we consistent across all views? So where do we place the button in terms of going next, in terms of checkout, let's say, or even across platforms? What do I mean by platforms?
Operating system.
Okay, operating systems. So let's say many apps that are on both on iOS and Android try to be to some extent similar. Of course, Android has a few specifics, especially the buttons, the hot buttons. But as well, let's say if your product involves a lot of also web usage, or let's say sometimes people use it on the web, but as well as on the mobile phone. I guess like music apps are an example. You know, when you work, you listen maybe to Spotify, and you also have it on your phone. So let's say if if certain flows are very different in terms of creating a playlist or certain things, then the user might get confused. So you want to have a certain consistency across platforms, where at least like core concepts are, how to create a playlist or how to do certain things are in sync. And that's always, let's say, that's sometimes not so easy because you have people working on different teams. There might be the web team, and then there's the mobile team, and so on. And often it's then the tester, actually, because if you're a tester, okay, depending on the company size, you might be more on the mobile side, but it might be the case that you help out on the web as well. And then if you see like, okay, hey, on mobile it's way different, so hey, some users might get confused. Something to bring up. So when I asked you what is an easy to use app, I heard like it's simple and it's intuitive. I heard it a few times. So that's really, really important on mobile. So really, I cannot stress it enough. Is it really simple enough to use? Is it directly clear? And especially what I've seen on many projects, are the buttons large enough in that sense, really? And I'm actually, after the slide, I will show you something that basically, you guys saw like Apple Music just launched, and I kind of looked at the app when they launched it, and you will be surprised what I saw. Also consider what's the most important feature for your app. So if, let's say, nothing works, what is the most important thing? What should work, at least? What is it? And is it intuitive?
Whatever is the purpose of that.
Yeah. And is that intuitive? Is that clear? Yeah. Because many apps have so many features, settings and so on. But what's the number one thing? Especially, depending on the company that you're gonna work. If you work for like a smaller company or startup, there's usually lack of resources. So, of course, yeah, we can do everything really intuitive and so on. But you have to start somewhere. And maybe you realize like these 10 things should be more intuitive. But let's start focusing first on one. What's the most important thing? And let's start just work on that and make that really good, and then move on to the others. So what I'm gonna do here now is actually I want to show you something. So who is using Apple Music? No one? But you heard about it, that they launched an app. So what I did actually, I took the app on the launch day and I was checking it out because I'm a big music fan, and so Apple launching a music app, I wanted to check it out, like, hey, what's happening there? So, and I started to use it and I found quite a few bugs, and I'm gonna share that with you. So the first one was kind of in the morning, in that sense, where basically labels were not populated in that sense. So it's basically code defined by the developer in that sense. So stuff just didn't work. That was mainly, I would say, a problem because of a lot of load on the day they launched it. So they had, I assume, just traffic problems. But as well as this one here, actually, that's a buy button here, and it completely, the whole app froze in that sense. So I kind of want to buy the subscription, but nothing worked. So completely frozen. You had to go out again and to make it work. But as well, okay, that's mainly, I would say, launch traffic. I think I had to wait like 10, 15 seconds until something comes up in terms of my artist that I wanted to search for. So a lot in terms of user experience. I haven't mentioned that yet. It's also loading time. And one of the things, if someone asks you, okay, what is the longest time you want to wait? What do you what would you say? 5 seconds, 10, 3? 3? Okay, so that's something also to bring in terms of your testing. Have a max, have a threshold, or ask in the company, okay, what's our threshold on which connection? Because there's a difference if you're on Wi-Fi in the office, and use the app, or if you're then on LTE or 4G or even less, or Edge. So how long does it take? What's our standard in the company? Are we willing to wait 5 seconds on Wi-Fi or less? What's our measurement there? So you see that screen. So I wanted to add. So I played a song. I wanted to add the song to a playlist. And so I'm at the song view, and I add to playlist, and I come to the screen. What would you say? Say it again.
The song should be displayed.
So the song should be displayed?
Yeah,
Sorry, 1% of the time. Back. It should be in the list. So, okay, what else?
So the song and the artist
should be. The song should, okay. Something else? So kind of what, I don't know if it's still the case now, but basically what happened to me here is, okay, first of all, I should get some information here about the song, transition to the next view. But in that sense, I didn't create a playlist. So I had to completely go out of this workflow and go back somewhere else and create a playlist first. And then if I add the song to the playlist, then I can do it. So, but completely not intuitive, it was just like blank. At least you should say like here, like create a playlist.
So where did the song go?
So I had to, no, I couldn't, I selected or tapped add to playlist, and then I came to that screen. So I had to create a playlist first, but I didn't know, because I was I was crazy about the songs, I want to keep it, and then I got disappointed, like, oh my God, it doesn't work. I mean, I kind of thought, okay, maybe I have to create a playlist first, but I'm using like apps all the time. If I asked my mom, she was like, oh my God, she would call me. So, okay, so I want to show that screen here. So I can add buttons to a playlist, and what do you think if you see like these small buttons here? I mean, it doesn't look like a button. It's really like, it's hard. Also, if I look at that, it looks very crowded down there, right? And I mean, you see it here. There's like a lot of space up here, but there's hardly anything here, right? So why don't you move it a little bit more up, that it's at least, a little bit more intuitive? Because I was like, oh my God, now I can basically tap here, I can tap here, maybe I can tap here, I can tap here. Like, I have so many like actions down there, so way too many. So at least give me a little bit more padding between the interaction elements. All right, that was our session on mobile UX already. Any questions? No questions so far? Okay. So then we're good in time. Okay. I'm gonna talk a little bit now about a student project, and then we're gonna do a break. Okay, so before I introduce kind of the project, some guidelines. So I want you to pair up with one other classmate. We will have some time for group work in each of the sessions. So today as well, there will be a little time. Next session, and yeah, then it's already presentation. So only today and next time. And I want you to basically create a 3-minute presentation. And I want that both of you present. At least if it's like 1.5 minute, 1.5 minute, or 1 or 2. It's up to you. But both of you, I'd like to talk. The reason is so many situations when you are in companies, you have to give like at least a little presentation. And so here it's a safe environment. We can practice presentations, so it's a good thing. So what is it about? I'd like you to pick an iOS or Android app that has a good user experience, and you can compare it to its competitors in that sense if you want, and tell us why. So what is a certain good user experience, like a certain app that can be just, let's say, a certain section of the user flow where you say maybe it's a checkout, maybe you go through your favorite like shopping apps, maybe you compare something there, or maybe you certain social media or messaging apps. Maybe you look at some different apps and kind of compare a few things, and it's like, okay, this app is actually nicer than another app. You could also check out some like app store charts in that sense if you are completely blank, and maybe download a few apps. I mean, you have a little time now, a few days. So, just download a few apps. Maybe ask some of your friends, and that also counts in terms of bad user experience. So where something is a little bit complicated, where it's not intuitive, this can be wording, this can be flow, this can be button size. Just something that you kind of realize where you feel like, okay, that's not so cool. And the third part is and this can be completely different apps, or most likely it will be different apps. So pick an iOS or Android app that has a functional bug and create a bug report for it. So maybe similar to what I did in terms of the Apple Music bug. You saw a few examples there. You don't have to list like 5 bugs or so. I just basically one bug that you found. This bug report should definitely include, let's say, a screenshot, or maybe 2 or 3. It's up to you. You want to highlight maybe certain things. I can show you in a moment like a nice tool that I'm often using. It's called Sketch. It's very, very handy. So basically, let's say I have a screenshot of a device, and then you have here some tools here on the right side, and you can basically just draw here. Okay, that's not nice here, or so here. Then I can even say boom, gone, or this button is too small, and you can even write here too small. And you can enlarge it. Boom. Super, super handy. So you don't have to be a graphic designer or Photoshop or whatever. It's for free. You can download it. It's called Sketch. I write it down. Sketch. I believe it's on Windows as well as Mac. So super handy. I use it at least 3 times per day. And then, you can save that, or you can take a screenshot and use it. Okay. So this bug report should include at least a screenshot, even 2 or 3. Will be good if you guys also include the device log. So Android as well as iOS. iOS I'm going to show you. So maybe you directly, when going through the device log, maybe you already see something. Might be memory leak or whatever it is. So look a little bit into it. You should write, of course, like how did you create this bug? So how can the developer replicate it? You want to also talk about the device. So which device was it? OS version.
Catch the bug?
If you don't catch a bug, you will find a bug somewhere. Try a few apps. Ask some of your friends, or even, you can even be so creative. You go to the Play Store or App Store and look where are people complaining about certain things, and then you download the app and try it out. So I think there are like many bugs out there. Okay, and so now for the guys who are like, I wrote down here A+. So for the guys who want to do like something extra, actually, if you can create an automated test case to catch this bug, that would be amazing. So you find it manually, okay, and now you create an automated test case. So we're a little bit limited in that sense. You can just do that for Android because it's else for iOS you need to have the source code. So if let's say you found a bug on Android, and then I can show you how you basically can do an automation on that. So for this task you're a little bit limited on Android only. Yeah. GUI functional test, yeah. Good. Yeah, any questions?
Do we have to make sure that our apps are different in the class? Or
Yeah, that should be.
we happen to choose the same app all the time?
It should be different bugs in that sense.
Should we just different
Yeah, let's say it would be sad if everyone comes up and just shows like one bug. Then I would think like, hey, you guys copied from each other. So it should be like a little, it should be different in that sense, yeah.
So, but the thing is, I don't have, I just have iOS.
Yeah.
To compare.
Yeah, then do it on iOS, or you partner with someone on Android. I mean, the first until here you can do everything, you know.
So can three of us be paired together?
Because I don't have Android either.
She doesn't have Android, and they're just making me sit here because I have a Mac and
Generally would be good. Like, how many people are we? Would be good, like 2 people.
I don't know, maybe next week there will be a lot of people.
Yeah. Okay, we can do a few exceptions with, I don't know, 3, but usually it should be 2.
Are we comparing iOS with Android?
Say it again.
Are we comparing iOS with Android, like the same app?
No, not in that sense.
Two different applications for it?
No, you can. It's up to you. You can just do everything iOS, or everything Android, or you can say here. I don't know if you have an Android and the iOS phone. You can say like, okay, I found this on iOS and this on Android. Bad experience. Can be completely different apps, completely different. You know. Yeah, I mean, let's say it's not about the comparison between Android and iOS here. It's more like, okay, you're using iOS and you have a bad experience about this app, and now you document it. Why is it bad? You know, so we're not really like looking back and forth into like, okay, why is it good on Android and why iOS in that sense? You know, it's more like, okay, you're an Android user. Okay, you had this bad experience. Like, imagine you're working for this company, and now you have to go. Basically, you have to report this issue that you found, or make the suggestion. Yeah.
If I pick a app like Clash of Clans or something,
Yeah.
and I did the test on iOS, and can I do it on Android too? Like I can compare to Android, like whether it's a like good app on Android or good app on iOS. It has to be completely different, or?
No, I think it's not so much about the comparison between the platforms.
Okay.
It's just about your experience, you know.
So I can
What
do that, right?
what I mean here with compared to its competitors. So let's say maybe to kind of, let's say when you
Because I have played.
Maybe
suppose-
Kohl's and Amazon, right? Something
say it again.
When you said competitors.
Yeah.
So Kohl's and Amazon, which does both shopping.
Exactly. I meant more like, let's say you use Facebook Messenger, and then I don't know, you're kind of a little bit annoyed by that feature or something. Then it might be worth to look at WhatsApp and some of the other Kik or what is out there to kind of see a little bit like, hey, how are they doing it? Do you like it there better? So to kind of get a little bit, or maybe even make a suggestion there, because yeah, that kind of like trains you in terms of user experience. And I mean, in general, kind of what let's say this session was also about is one thing that, let's say, for you to take away here, if you're interested of diving more into mobile, QA, is pay attention to the apps that you use. Why is it good in your daily, when you use a new app? So what are they doing really well, and what are they not doing well? So kind of just have this little bit of this mindset, and you will some really interesting things. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So then let's do. How are you guys feeling? Should we now do a quick break and then continue? Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's do a quick break. So 10 minutes.